Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, Advanced English Listening Practice Podcast, topic name is 5 Books for Non-Native English Speakers. We're doing a deep dive today into something lots of ambitious learners face. Moving past textbook English into reading real, authentic English comfortably. You know, if you've ever felt like English grammar is this tangled vine you're wrestling with, or the vocabulary seems like a huge ocean.
Right, or idioms are like buried treasure you just can't find.
Exactly. You're definitely not alone feeling that frustration.
It's a common hurdle.
Yeah.
So the idea today is to act as your literary guide. We want to pull out some really valuable, approachable books, kind of like maps to that treasure that are perfect for non-native speakers ready to, make that leap into fluent reading.
Okay, let's unpack that straight away. Why are we focusing so much on reading fiction? I mean, why not just stick with the ESL textbooks, the ones that drill grammar and list vocabulary?
That's a great question. It's because fiction gives you something textbooks often can't. This unique mix of, actual enjoyment and deep, almost subconscious learning.
Subconscious learning.
Yeah. Textbooks give you the rules, the structure, and that's important, don't get me wrong. But stories, they immerse you. You see language as it's really used by native speakers.
So in context.
Precisely. You see new words exactly where they belong. You pick up the rhythm of natural dialogue. And maybe most importantly, you start absorbing cultural nuances, those subtle things, without even actively trying to learn them. It's like learning by stealth.
Right, that effortless absorption. That's the key aha moment, isn't it? And this isn't just a hunch, is it? There's data.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Research actually shows that extensive reading for pleasure doesn't just kill time. It really boosts overall fluency, speeds up your comprehension, and can grow your vocabulary by, get this, up to 20% in just a few months if you're consistent.
Wow, 20%, that's huge. Just from reading books you enjoy.
It is. But, this is a big but, the key is selection. You won't get that boost if you jump straight into, say, Moby Dick and get totally discouraged.
Right, that would be overwhelming.
Exactly. For an intermediate learner, it's all about accessibility first. We need books that build your confidence, books that actually help you avoid getting frustrated. So the 5 we've picked today, they hit that sweet spot. Simple enough in structure, clear sentences, manageable length, but still deep in theme. They're like perfect stepping stones.
That balance sounds crucial. Okay, so lay it out for us. What's the lineup for this deep dive?
All right. We're starting with a philosophical fable, The Little Prince. Then we'll move to a lyrical American classic, Charlotte's Web.
Okay.
After that, we step it up a bit with a sharp political allegory, Animal Farm. Then, a masterclass in concise writing, The Old Man and the Sea.
Hemingway, right.
That's the one. And finally, we'll dive into a huge modern adventure, the one that really started a global phenomenon, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Okay, quite a range there, different styles, different lengths.
Exactly. And as we go through each one, we're not just going to, summarize the plot. We'll look at why its specific structure works for learners. We'll pull out some key vocabulary and grammar points, explaining them conversationally, and importantly, suggest some discussion topics.
Discussion topics. Good, because using the language is where it really sticks, isn't it?
Absolutely. The learning really solidifies when you actually talk about the ideas, use the new words.
Great. I like that focus on making it active. Okay, let's start the journey then. Part 1, the gentle entry points. These are the ones to build that initial confidence.
Okay, first up, The Little Prince. Even though it was originally French, the English translation is just superb for learners. What makes it work so well is its elegance, its simplicity. It's profound, but somehow really accessible.
And that simplicity, you mentioned the structure.
Yeah.
Is it mainly the sentences?
It absolutely is. The writing relies heavily on short, clear, declarative sentences. Just statements, subject, verb, object, the most basic building blocks.
Like the pilot was alone.
Exactly. Or he met a prince. The fox was wise. Simple stuff. It avoids those long, complicated sentences with lots of clauses that can really trip learners up.
And I remember seeing something about repetition being important here.
Yes. Repetition in a book like this is, it's a gift for learning. Think about famous lines like the prince constantly asking, "Draw me a sheep."
Right.
That doesn't just repeat the word sheep. It naturally introduces the imperative form, the command form, in a context that's really easy to remember. And similarly, when he keeps asking about his rose, you naturally pick up words like planet, star, fox, heart. It reinforces that core vocabulary.
I can see how that repetition would build confidence. You start recognizing things.
You do. And the structure helps too. It's a fable, so the chapters are super short, usually just a few pages. So you don't feel like you're facing this massive book. You can read a chapter in maybe 10 minutes, feel good about it, and stop if you need to. Plus those lovely illustrations, they're not just nice to look at. They give you really important visual cues for the language, especially the more abstract ideas. Great for visual learners.
Let's talk language a bit more. It's famous for metaphors, right? Like the whole taming thing with the fox. Isn't figurative language usually quite advanced, maybe difficult?
It can be, but here it's introduced very gently. The big metaphors, like taming, meaning creating bonds, aren't just thrown at you. They're explained through the dialogue, through the actions.
Oh, okay.
So the book actually encourages you to figure out the meaning from the context around it. And that skill-inferring meaning is absolutely vital for real-world fluency. You learn to guess what a tricky word means instead of reaching for the dictionary every single time.
That makes sense. And what about specific grammar points? What should a learner look out for?
Well, you'll see a really clean contrast between two main verb tenses. For telling the story, the adventure part, it mostly uses the simple past. The prince visited 6 planets, the pilot crashed. That's key for understanding how stories flow.
Right, the narrative tense.
Exactly. But then, for those famous quotes, those timeless truths the book shares, it uses the present simple, like, adults never understand anything, or what is essential is invisible to the eye.
Okay. So you see the difference directly. Narrating past events versus stating general truth.
Right. It's a really practical grammar lesson embedded in the story, and you also get lots of practice with questions in the dialogues.
Okay, maybe a quick plot refresher for anyone who hasn't read it. It starts with the pilot crashing in the Sahara.
Correct. Crashes his plane, is totally alone, and then this mysterious little boy, the prince from asteroid B612, just appears.
And asks him to draw a sheep.
That's the one. And then the prince tells his story. About his tiny planet, his volcanoes, fighting off those baobab seeds.
Which is that great metaphor, right? About tackling small problems before they become huge.
Exactly. And he talks about leaving his planet because of his difficult relationship with his vain rose. That leads him to visit other asteroids, where he meets these caricatures of adults. The king with no subjects, the businessman counting stars he doesn't appreciate, the tippler drinking to forget he's ashamed of drinking.
Yeah, those encounters are quite funny, but also critiques of adult life. And structurally, just simple stories told in the past tense.
Perfect for practicing narration.
Yeah.
Then he gets to Earth, meets the snake, the flowers, and finally the fox. And the 5 teaches him that really famous lesson about connection, about responsibility, summed up in that quote. One sees clearly only with the heart. What is essential is invisible to the eye.
Beautiful.
And that structure, moving from one encounter to the next, is great for learning sequencing words. Then, after that, finally. And it explains abstract ideas like loneliness or responsibility through what the prince does, not just definitions.
I saw some feedback from learners saying they felt much more confident after reading it, mainly because it's so short, under 100 pages.
Yeah, the brevity is a huge plus. Encourages rereading, too.
And apparently, because it's translated into, over 500 languages, learners can easily check a tricky bit in their own language if they get really stuck. That's a nice safety net.
Definitely a big advantage. It makes it feel very achievable. #2. Charlotte's Web. E.B. White.
Okay, next gentle entry point. Charlotte's Web, a real American classic. You described its style as lyrical clarity.
Yeah, that's how I think of it. The writing is just beautiful, very descriptive, but it's not complicated. E.B. White was a master of painting vivid pictures with words without making the vocabulary feel overwhelming.
And the language itself, active voice, you mentioned.
Very much so. It's a great example of active voice. So the subject does the action, Wilbur ran, Charlotte spun. It's much more direct and dynamic than the passive voice. The web was spun by Charlotte.
Easier to follow.
Much easier. And it introduces common action verbs really naturally. The book also uses repetition very effectively, especially for those farm-related words, barn, pig pen, spider web. You see them again and again.
And why is that kind of repetition better than just memorizing a list of farm words?
Oh, context is everything. When you read pig pen, 10 times in the story, you don't just learn the definition, you connect it to Wilbur, to the smells, the mud, the goose.
You build associations.
Exactly. It creates this rich memory that makes the word much easier to recall and use later in conversation. Even the sounds, the onomatopoeia like oink, buzz, moo, they help with pronunciation and getting a feel for the sounds of English.
But the dialogue sounded practical too, even though it's, well, animals talking.
It really is practical. They speak in a very natural, casual way. Lots of contractions. It's can't.
Which is how people actually talk.
Precisely. Learners who only see formal written English often get thrown off by real spoken English because it's full of contractions. So Charlotte's Web gives you that crucial exposure in a really gentle way. Simple questions, too.
Structurally, it seems manageable, too. 22 chapters, under 200 pages.
Yeah, it keeps that pattern of short, digestible chapters. Good for reading bit by bit.
Okay, the plot centers around Wilbur the pig, right? Saved by Fern.
Yes, Fern saves him as the runt of the litter. He moves to her uncle's farm, Zuckerman's barn. He's happy at first, but then he finds out the grim reality he's destined to be Christmas dinner.
Oh, dear.
He's devastated, naturally. But then Charlotte, the wise spider in the barn doorway, makes him a promise. I will save you.
And her plan involves web messages.
The famous ones. She starts weaving words into her web above Wilbur's pen, words like some pig, then terrific, radiant, and finally humble. It causes a huge sensation, makes Wilbur famous, and ultimately saves his life. The story arc is great for seeing the future tense in action, I will save you, and contrasting it with the simple past for what happened. It ends bittersweetly, though, with Charlotte dying after laying her egg sac, which Wilbur then protects.
What's the main grammar takeaway for learners here?
Beyond tenses, you get really good practice with descriptive adjectives in a series. Learning how to string them together naturally, like the big, friendly, humble pig. That's a common structure.
Okay.
Plus, you see lots of dialogue tags. Fern whispered, Charlotte replied, which helps understand who's speaking. And basic conditional ideas, if I spin the word, they will believe you. Also, because it's quite an emotional story, friendship, loyalty loss, it naturally builds vocabulary around feelings. People often say it's really motivating because it's funny, but also genuinely moving.
And one last point I saw mentioned reading it aloud.
Yes. Because the prose is so rhythmic and well-written, reading Charlotte's Web aloud is fantastic practice for improving your English intonation and flow. You start to feel the music of the language, a really big benefit for speaking fluency.
All right, we've got our confidence builders with The Little Prince and Charlotte's Web. Now, we need to push ourselves a bit, right? Build some reading stamina with texts that are maybe simple on the surface, but pack a punch thematically. This is part 2.
Exactly. These next two are for that intermediate learner who's ready for more complex ideas, but maybe not quite ready for super complex language just yet. #3, Animal Farm, George Orwell.
So, Animal Farm. This feels like a definite step up. We're moving from gentle kids' stories to, well, a pretty pointed political allegory. Some might think, isn't political stuff too hard? But you're saying Orwell's style makes it work?
It does, because Orwell was obsessed with clarity and directness. His language is incredibly crisp, very unadorned, short sentences, mostly everyday vocabulary. Farm, animal, rebel, work, food. So this novella, it's only about 112 pages, takes these huge, complex political ideas, revolution, corruption, totalitarianism, and explains them using language that's actually quite basic and easy to follow.
So it's like a shortcut to understanding some quite difficult vocabulary.
In a way, yes. The allegory itself simplifies things. You learn words like propaganda or tyranny, not from a dictionary definition, but by watching what the pigs do. You see Squealer twisting the truth, that's propaganda. You see Napoleon using force, that's tyranny. The context makes the meaning clear.
And you mentioned something earlier. Orwell accidentally created a grammar lesson with the slogans.
Yes, it's one of the most brilliant parts for a learner. Those repetitive slogans like the initial, all animals are equal, they naturally teach comparatives and superlatives.
How so?
Well, you start with all animals are equal, then later things change and maybe pigs get more food. And eventually you arrive at that famous final twisted slogan, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. By the time you get there, you've seen equality, then a comparison, in a really powerful, unforgettable way.
That's clever. And the plot itself is quite straightforward, linear.
Very much so. It keeps you anchored. It starts with Old Major, the prize boar, sharing his dream of a farm run by animals, free from human exploitation.
The initial inspiration.
Right. After he dies, The pigs, mainly the clever Snowball and the more ruthless Napoleon, lead a successful rebellion. They kick out Mr. Jones, rename it Animal Farm, and write down the 7 commandments of animalism. Like whatever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy.
But then things start to go wrong. That's the core of the story, isn't it? The corruption.
It is. The equality promise just vanishes. The pigs start taking privileges, like the milk and apples, arguing they need it for brain work. Then Napoleon, using these dogs he's secretly trained, violently chases Snowball off the farm.
And blames Snowball for everything afterward.
Classic scapegoating. Napoleon then steals Snowball's plan for building a windmill. The pigs move into the farmhouse, start sleeping in beds, breaking all the original rules. And Squealer, the propaganda minister, keeps justifying it, even secretly changing the commandments on the barn wall.
Ah, the changing commandments. That must be where the grammar comes in.
Absolutely. You get huge exposure to the passive voice. The rules were changed. Snowball was exiled. The passive is used when the actor is unknown, or more importantly here, deliberately hidden. Who changed the rules? The pigs, but they don't admit it. Understanding the passive is so important for reading news or academic texts in English.
Okay.
And analyzing how those commandments evolve, especially the ones using negatives like, no animal shall sleep in a bed, which then becomes, no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. That's a fantastic exercise in seeing how language can be manipulated.
And because the themes, power, corruption, propaganda are so universal, it must be great for discussion practice.
Immense value.
Yeah.
It allows learners to move beyond just retelling the story, what happened, to real analysis. Why did it happen? What does it mean? You can have really interesting conversations about fairness, leadership, how language is used to control people. It pushes your speaking skills into more complex territory. #4. The Old Man and the Sea, Ernest Hemingway.
Okay, our second book for building stamina, Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. You call this a masterclass in minimalism. How does that help a learner?
Well, Hemingway's style is famous for what's called the iceberg theory. What you see on the surface, the language, is incredibly simple. Short sentences, sometimes almost abrupt, repetitive vocabulary focused on the core elements: sea, fish, line, boat, pain.
Sounds potentially boring.
Some find it stark at first, but the simplicity is deceptive. Beneath that surface, there's huge depth, enormous meaning. For a learner, that surface simplicity is key. The vocabulary is tightly focused on one theme: nature, fishing, the struggle.
So you're not juggling lots of different topic areas.
Exactly. You build a strong vocabulary set related to the story. And because the entire novella is short, about 127 pages, focuses so intensely on just one man, Santiago, and his internal struggle over a few days, it really helps with concentration. You're not trying to keep track of dozens of characters or subplots.
Hemingway's known for minimal dialogue too, so what's the language takeaway there?
The dialogues are sparse, yes, but very powerful when they occur. But perhaps more importantly for a learner, the book gives you incredible exposure to internal monologue. You spend a lot of time inside Santiago's head, reading his thoughts, his reflections, his memories.
And why is that useful?
Because expressing internal thoughts and reflections is often something learners find difficult when writing in English. Seeing how Hemingway structures Santiago's thoughts, the simple sentences, the repetition, the focus, provides a model. It shows you how internal reflection can be written clearly.
Okay, and grammar-wise, that very distinct, almost choppy style.
The main thing is the focus on simple sentence structure. Subject, verb, object, over and over. It forces you to grasp that core relationship. You also see lots of infinitives used naturally. He hoped to catch a big fish. He needed to fight the sharks. And very clear, simple conditionals. If the fish jumps, I will hold the line. Some teachers even encourage learners to try writing a paragraph imitating Hemingway's style. It's a great exercise because it forces you to be concise, to strip away unnecessary words, and just focus on the core message.
So the plot is basically old fisherman Santiago hasn't caught anything for ages.
84 days to be exact. He's considered unlucky. His young apprentice, Manolin, isn't allowed to fish with him anymore. So Santiago decides to go out really far, way out into the Gulf Stream, alone.
And he hooks something huge.
A giant marlin, bigger than his boat, and then begins this epic struggle that lasts for days. It's just him, the fish, the sea, the sun, pure endurance.
He eventually wins, right? Kills the marlin.
He does, eventually harpooning it. He lashes it to the side of his skiff. But the victory is short-lived. On the long journey back to shore, the blood attracts sharks.
Oh.
And they attack relentlessly. He fights them off as best he can, losing his harpoon, then his knife. By the time he finally reaches the harbor, exhausted, defeated in a way, all that's left of the magnificent fish is its skeleton. He stumbles home and falls asleep, dreaming famously of lions on a beach in Africa.
Wow. Simple story, but powerful. You mentioned the present participle being used effectively.
Yes, the ing form of the verb. Hemingway uses it constantly to convey that ongoing, intense action. He was pulling the line, the fish was fighting, the old man was straining. It puts you right there in the boat with him, feeling the struggle. And it embeds those fishing terms, hooking, gaffing, harpooning, naturally within that action.
So learners see that simple language doesn't mean simple ideas.
Not at all. It's often praised as a book you can read in an afternoon but think about for weeks. It shows that profound meaning can be conveyed with remarkable economy of language.
Okay, we've had gentle starts, we've built stamina. Now, part 3, immersion and integration. We're looking at a modern classic that's all about engagement, right? #, 5, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, J.K. Rowling.
Exactly. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone in the U.S., its massive global appeal is probably its biggest asset for a language learner.
It's longer, though, isn't it? Around 223 pages.
It is. It's a bigger commitment than the others we've discussed. And this is key, the story itself is so engaging, so full of humor and suspense that it just pulls you along. For an intermediate learner trying to build reading fluency, that motivation is absolutely critical. It keeps you turning the pages.
Okay, but here's a question. Harry Potter. It's full of made-up words, right? Muggle, Quidditch, Hogwarts, Hippogriff. And it's very British. Wouldn't that be confusing or even frustrating for someone trying to learn standard English?
That's a really valid point. And the answer lies in how the language is introduced. It's progressive. Yeah. The story doesn't just dump you in the magical world on page 1. It starts with Harry's totally normal, miserable life with the Dursleys. The language there is very common, very accessible.
Right, Privet Drive and all that.
Exactly. Then, the magical elements, including the fantasy vocabulary, are layered in gradually as Harry discovers the wizarding world. You have time to adjust. And most of those invented words are nouns, names for things, places, creatures. They're often easier to figure out from context or just accept as names compared to, say, complex phrasal verbs.
Ah, okay. So the structure eases you into it.
It does. It's a very naturally paced increase in vocabulary complexity. And the Britishisms, I actually see that as a plus.
Really? Why?
Because it gives learners valuable cultural exposure. Reading about a lift instead of an elevator, or hearing characters say rubbish instead of trash, or talking about revision for exams, it teaches you that English isn't just one single thing. It prepares you for the different varieties you'll encounter out in the world.
That's a good way to look at it. And the dialogue must be good for conversational stuff.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. The conversations between Harry, Ron, and Hermione are gold mines for learning natural slang, interjections, blimey, and the general rhythm of how young British people might talk.
Mm-hmm.
And the themes, friendship, finding where you belong, courage, facing challenges, these are universal. They provide a great context for learning and practicing vocabulary related to emotions and relationships, which is crucial for real conversation.
Okay, let's zero in on grammar. What are the big wins for a learner in this book?
2 big ones stand out. First, you get tons of exposure to reported speech.
Explaining what someone else said.
Exactly. Sentences like, Hagrid said that Harry was a wizard, or Professor McGonagall explained that the rules were. This is a structure that intermediate learners often struggle with, and it's used constantly here as characters share information and secrets. It's great practice.
Okay, reported speech. What's the second one?
The past perfect tense. Because there's a lot of backstory what happened when Harry was a baby, Voldemort's rise and fall. The book needs to refer to events that happened before the main narrative time.
Like Voldemort had tried to kill Harry 10 years earlier.
Precisely. Understanding the past perfect had plus past participle is essential for grasping that sequence of events, understanding the context. Harry Potter gives you lots of natural exposure to it. You also see plenty of adverbs modifying actions, flew quickly, and conditional sentences, especially with spells. If you say the spell correctly, it will work.
And the plot, briefly. Harry's miserable life discovers he's a wizard.
Yep. Rescued from the dreadful Dursleys by Hagrid, finds out about his parents, his scar, and the wizarding world. Goes to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, gets sorted into Gryffindor, makes friends with Ron and Hermione.
The Golden Trio.
The Golden Trio. They navigate classes like potions and charms, learn to fly broomsticks, deal with rivals like Draco Malfoy, and gradually uncover a plot revolving around the mysterious Philosopher's Stone hidden in the school. They suspect Professor Snape is after it, but the final confrontation reveals a different villain altogether, linked to Voldemort's return.
It's a real page-turner.
Absolutely. And reviews from learners consistently say that the first book, and often the first 3 in the series, are surprisingly accessible. It's just ideal for someone ready for a longer read because the fun factor is so high, it makes the commitment feel worthwhile. Hashtag tag 6 steps, integrating reading into your study routine.
Okay, so we've got our 5 books: The Little Prince, Charlotte's Web, Animal Farm, Old Man and the Sea, Harry Potter. But just knowing what to read isn't enough, is it? The real challenge is making reading an active part of learning, not just, passively looking at words. How do learners actually get the most language benefit out of these?
And this is absolutely crucial. We need to shift from just consuming the story to actively using it for language practice.
So what's strategy number 1? How do we stop just passively reading?
Okay, first, active reading strategy: highlight and infer. Resist the urge to look up every single unknown word immediately. That's the fastest way to get frustrated and give up.
Aim for, 80% understanding?
Something like that. Use a pencil. Or highlight digitally the words you don't know. But before you reach for the dictionary or app, really try to guess the meaning from the context. Look at the words around it, the situation. Like in The Little Prince, if you see the word tippler and the text mentions he's surrounded by bottles and ashamed and weak, you can probably infer he's someone who drinks too much.
Right. Use your detective skills.
Exactly. Build that inference muscle. Only look up words that keep reappearing or that genuinely block you from understanding the main point.
Okay, infer first. What about pronunciation and flow? Reading silently doesn't help you sound more natural.
True. That's where audiobook synchronization comes in. Get the audiobook version. Professional ones are best.
And listen while reading.
You can do it in stages. Maybe listen to a chapter first just to get the rhythm and general sound. Then read the text while listening. This connects the written word directly to the correct pronunciation, the stress, the intonation.
And the third step, try reading that same chapter aloud yourself, trying to mimic the narrator's flow and rhythm. This is especially good with lyrical books like Charlotte's Web. It trains your mouth and your ear at the same time.
Good tip. Now, how do we make sure the new words and grammar actually stick? Avoid the in one ear, out the other problem.
Right. We need reinforcement through journaling. After you finish a chapter or a section, just take 5 or 10 minutes. Write a short summary in English of what you just read.
Just a few sentences.
Could be. It's a quick check. Did I actually understand that? If you can barely write anything, maybe you need to reread it more carefully. You can also use specific prompts related to the book. For Animal Farm, maybe you write a diary entry as if you were snowballing after being exiled.
Ooh, creative.
Or for The Little Prince, write a short paragraph about what taming means to you after reading the fox's explanation. It forces you to actively use the language and ideas from the book, combining reading, writing, and vocabulary recall.
Makes sense. And language is social. How can these books help with actual speaking practice?
Through community and discussion. If you can, find a book club, even an online one, or just a study partner reading the same book.
And talk about the themes.
Exactly. These books are full of rich, universal themes. Discuss the pig's ethics in Animal Farm. Talk about friendship and loss in Charlotte's Web. Debate what true courage means after reading The Old Man and the Sea. Or discuss belonging and prejudice in Harry Potter.
So you're practicing expressing opinions, analyzing.
Right. You move beyond simple description into higher level conversation. Use the vocabulary you've learned. Don't aim for perfection, just clear communication of your ideas.
Okay, important point, setting goals. It's easy to get overwhelmed and burn out. What's realistic?
Cue advice. Set small, manageable goals. Please, don't decide you're going to read 50 pages every single day if you're not used to it.
Recipe for failure.
Often, yes. Instead, commit to something smaller, like just 1 chapter a day. For The Little Prince, that might only be 10 minutes. For Harry Potter, maybe 20, 30 minutes. But doing it consistently, day after day, builds that reading muscle, that stamina, much more effectively than trying to sprint and then stopping.
1 chapter a day, that feels achievable.
Totally. And if you read 1 chapter of Harry Potter a day, you'll finish the book in about 3 weeks. That's a massive win and a huge confidence boost.
Okay, last tip, technology. How can that help lock in the vocabulary?
Use contextual vocabulary tracking. You can use a simple notebook, or better yet, a flashcard app that uses spaced repetition like Anki or Quizlet are popular.
Yeah.
Here's the key. Don't just write the word and its definition.
What then?
Write down the entire sentence from the book where you found the word. Why? Because words stick better when you remember their context. You'll remember propaganda much better if you associate it with squealer speeches in Animal Farm, rather than just seeing it on an isolated list. Review those contextual sentences for maybe 5 minutes each day. Tag outro.
Wow, okay. That's a really comprehensive look at how picking the right books and using them actively can be just transformative for English fluency. We started off talking about how daunting it can feel.
Right. The tangled vines of grammar, the ocean of vocabulary.
But we're ending with 5 specific, powerful tools. These books aren't just stories. They're like stepping stones.
And more than just language tools, really. They offer these profound lessons, don't they? The Prince on what's essential, Charlotte on loyalty, Hemingway on endurance, Harry on courage and belonging. Reading for fluency can absolutely be reading for wisdom, too.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. The big takeaway seems to be that learning English is this ongoing journey, but choosing great literature like this really enriches the whole process. It makes it more enjoyable, more meaningful, and actually accelerates your progress.
Definitely. And we saw how different authors use structure to help the reader. Hemingway's minimalism, White's lyrical repetition, Orwell's clear allegory, different ways to make big ideas accessible.
Which leads perfectly to our final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. We've talked about these different writing styles, the minimalist, the lyrical, the allegorical. So the question is, which of those styles do you think might benefit your own English communication the most right now? Which structure could help you get your ideas across most clearly, most powerfully?
Something to think about. But the main thing is to start. Pick one of these books, maybe set that goal 1 chapter a day, and just begin your literary adventure towards fluency.
Absolutely. That's all for this deep dive. We really hope you found this helpful. Thank you for joining us at the Learn English Lab.
Keep reading.
And remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.